Hello and welcome back to Now Read This, the Chronicles of Prydain, Book 5, The High King, Chapter 15, The River of Ice. Under the sudden outpouring of golden light, the huntsmen shouted in alarm, and a wave of fear rippled along the marching column as they faltered and fell back into the protection of a deep gorge. Instantly, Terran realized how closely he had come to leading the Comet Horsemen into a fatal trap, but a cry of joy sprang from his lips. "Eilonwy!" He would have urged Melonlas across the valley to the mountainside had not Fluda put out a restraining hand.
"Hold! Hold!" cried the bard. "She's found us right enough. Great Balin, there's no mistaking the light from that girl's bauble. She's saved our lives with it. Gurgi's sure to be with her too, but if you go galloping after them, none of you will get back. We've seen the huntsmen, and they could hardly help seeing us."
Dolly had clambered atop a boulder and stood peering after the retreating huntsman. Eilonwy's signal winked out as quickly as it had appeared, and in another moment the winter darkness fell once more over the valley. "A fine plight," growled the dwarf. "Of all times to be caught above ground. The mine is useless to us, and there's no other passage within a week's march. Even if there were, we couldn't reach it with an army of huntsmen blocking the way." Fluda had drawn his sword.
"I say attack! Those foul villains had a good scare. They'll have no stomach for a fight now. We'll set upon them without warning. Great Balin, that's something they won't expect."
Dolly snorted at him. "You've left your wits in the mine shaft. Set upon the huntsman, slay one and make the others that much stronger? Even fair folk would think twice about attacking those ruffians. No, my friend, it won't answer."
"When I was a giant," put in Glue, "it would have been a simple matter for me to have put them all to flight. However, through no fault of my own, times have changed, and I can hardly say they've changed for the better. On Mona, for example, one day I had decided something really had to be done about those impudent bats. It's an interesting tale."
"Silence, you puny thing!" commanded the bard. "You've said enough and done enough."
"That's right, lay all the blame on me," sniffed Glue. "It's my fault Gwydion's sword was stolen. It's my fault the cauldron-born escaped. My fault every other disagreeable thing has happened."
The bard did not deign to answer the former giant's whining outburst. Terran, having ordered the Comet warriors into the relative safety of the tunnel mouth, returned and stood beside the companions. "I fear Dolly is right," Terran said. "By attacking the huntsmen, we can only destroy ourselves. Our strength is slight enough as it is, and we dare not waste it. We have been long delayed, and already may be too late to aid Gwydion. No, we must find some means to make our way despite the huntsmen." Dolly shook his head. "Still won't answer. They know we're here. They'll know if we try to move. All they need to do is to track us. For the matter of that, I'll be surprised if we're not attacked before dawn. Look to your skins, my friend. It may be the last time you'll see them whole again." "Dolly," Terran said urgently, "you're the only one who can help us now. Will you spy out the huntsmen's camp? Learn all you can of their plans. I know how you feel about turning yourself invisible, but—" "Invisible?" shouted the dwarf, clapping a hand to his head. "I knew it would come to that sooner or later. It always does. Good old Dolly, turn invisible. I'm not sure I can do it anymore. I've tried to forget how. It hurts my ears. I'd sooner have my head stuffed with hornets and wasps. No, out of the question. Ask anything else you like, but not that." "Good old Dolly," Terran said. "I was sure you'd do it." After a further show of reluctance, which deceived no one except perhaps Dolly himself, the crimson-haired dwarf consented to do as Terran had asked. Dolly wrinkled his eyes shut, took a deep breath as though making ready to plunge into icy water, and flickered out of sight. Had it not been for a stifled sound of irritable grumbling, Terran would not have believed Dolly to be there at all. Only the faint click of pebbles stirred by unseen feet told Terran that the dwarf had moved from the tunnel toward the enemy lines. At Dolly's orders, the Fairfolk troop took guard posts in a wide half-circle beyond the tunnel's mouth, where their sharp eyes and ears could catch any threatening movement or sound. Terran was amazed at how still these warriors remained, silent and nearly as invisible as Dolly. Their white garb made them seem no more than ice-covered stones or frosted hummocks under the moon, which had now begun to drift from behind the clouds. The horsemen drowsed among their steeds for warmth. Glue curled up nearby. Just within the tunnel, Fluda sat with his back against the wall of a rock, one hand on his harp, the other resting on the huge head of Liane, who had stretched out beside him and was gently purring. Muffled in his cloak, Taran gazed once more in wonder at the mountainside where first had appeared Eilonwy's signal light. "She is alive," he murmured to himself. "Alive," he whispered again, and his heart leapt each time he spoke the words. Gurgi would be with her, of this he was somehow sure. All his senses told him both companions had survived. Over the chill air came the baying of a wolf. There were other sounds, as if of distant shouting, but they soon faded, and he gave them no thought, filled as he was with his new-found hope. Half the night had worn away when Dolly flickered back into sight. The dwarf, too excited to complain of his buzzing ears, hurriedly beckoned Taran and Fluda to follow him. Ordering the horsemen to stand alert, Taran hastened after the companions. The fair-folk warriors were already jog-trotting behind Dolly, silent as white shadows. Taran at first thought the dwarf meant to lead them directly to the huntsman's camp. Instead, Dolly turned off a little distance before it and began scrambling up a slope rising high above the gorge. "The huntsmen are still there," Dolly muttered under his breath as they climbed. "No wish of their own. We have some friends we didn't know about. Bears and wolves, dozens of them, all along the rim of the gorge. A band of huntsmen tried to climb out. Good thing they couldn't see me or I wouldn't be here. But they were seen. The bears got to them first. Quick work they made of those villains. Bloody work, but quick." "They slew a party of huntsmen," Taran frowned. "Now the others are even stronger." "Be that as it may," replied Dolly. "The bears and wolves can attend to them better than we can. I doubt the huntsmen will attack tonight. They fear the animals. They'll stay in the gorge until morning, and that's where I want them. I think I've struck on something." By the time they had reached the summit, it had come to the rim of an ice-bound lake. At the sheer drop over the edge of the bluff, a frozen waterfall glittered under the moon, like fingers on a huge fist. Vast icicles clawed at the steep slope, as though holding the lake in its frigid grip. A river of hard silver twisted downward toward the gorge where the huntsmen were sheltering. Taran glimpsed their campfires, glowing like baleful eyes in the darkness. Though he could not be sure, it seemed to him that shadowy shapes stirred among the rocks and stunted brush of the higher ground. Perhaps the bears and wolves of which the dwarf had spoken. "There," Dolly said. "What do you think of that?"
"What do I think?" cried the bard. "My old friend, I think you're the one who left your wits in the mine. You've led us on a good climb, but I should hardly call this a moment to admire the beauties of nature." The dwarf put his hands on his hips and looked at Fluda with exasperation.
"Sometimes I think Idling's right about you humans. Can't you see past your nose? Can't you see it all? We're nearly atop those ruffians. Free the lake, free the waterfall, let it go pouring down straight onto the camp."
Taran caught his breath. For a moment his heart leapt hopefully. Then he shook his head. "The task is too great, Dolly. The ice will defeat us."
"Then melt it," shouted the dwarf. "Cut branches, bushes, all that will burn. Where the ice is too thick, chop it away. How many times must I tell you, you're dealing with fair folk?"
"Can it indeed be done?" Taran whispered.
"Would I have said it if I didn't think so?" the dwarf snapped.
Fluda gave a low whistle of admiration.
"You think in large terms, old fellow, but it appeals to me. Great Balin, if we could pull it off, we'd strike them all down in one blow, and rid ourselves of them once and for all."
Dolly was no longer listening to the bard, but was passing hasty orders to the fair-folk warriors, who unslung their axes and with all speed began chopping and hacking at the trees, uprooting underbrush and racing with their burdens to the lake. Casting his doubts aside, Taran drew his sword and hewed at the branches. Fluda toiled beside him. Despite the bitter cold air, their brows streamed, their panting breath hung in a white haze before their faces. At the frozen waterfall, the axes of the fair folk rang upon the ice. Dolly dashed among the warriors, adding to the pile of brushes and branches, dislodging rocks and boulders to form a straighter, swifter channel. The night was waning quickly. Taran stumbled in exhaustion, his cold, numbed hands torn and bleeding. Fluda was barely able to keep his feet, but the efforts of the fair folk never slackened. Before dawn, the lake and the watercourse were piled high, as though a forest had overgrown them. Only then was Dolly satisfied. "Now we'll set it alight," he cried to Taran. "Fair folk tinder burns hotter than anything you humans know. It will blaze in no time." He whistled shrilly through his teeth. All along the lake, the torches of the fair folk flamed, then arced like shooting stars as the warriors flung them into the pyre. Taran saw the first branches catch fire, then the rest. A fierce crackling filled his ears, and over it he heard Dolly shouting for the companions to race clear of the blaze. A wave of heat, like the breath of a furnace, caught at Taran as he struggled for a foothold among the stones. The ice was melting. He heard the hiss of quenched flames, but the fire, too high to be altogether extinguished, raged even more hotly. From the watercourse came the crack and drone of boulders shifting under the growing pressure of the rising flood. In a moment, like a gate ripping from its hinges, like a wall collapsing, the side of the bluff gave way, and through the channel burst a sheet of water carrying all before it. Huge blocks of ice thundered down the slope, bounding and rolling as if they had been no more than pebbles. The swift outpouring bore with it the flaming branches. Above the streaming mass clouds of sparks billowed and swirled, and the watercourse blazed all along its length. In the gorge below, the huntsmen shouted and strove to flee. It was too late. The rushing waters and careening boulders flung back the warriors as they sought to scramble up the ravine. Screaming and cursing, they fell beneath the cascade or were tossed in the air like chips to be dashed against the sharp rocks. A few gained higher ground, but as they did, Taran saw dark shapes spring to grapple with them, and now it was the turn of the waiting animals to take vengeance on those who had ever mercilessly hunted and slaughtered them. Silence fell over the gorge. In the dawn light, Taran saw the glint of the dark waters that had flooded the ravine. Some of the branches still burned, others smouldered, and a grey mist of smoke hung in the air. A rattle of stones behind him made Taran spin about and snatch his blade from the scabbard. "Hello," said Eilonwy. "We're back again." "You have an odd way of welcoming people," Eilonwy went on, as Taran, his heart too full to speak, stared speechless at her. "You might at least say something." While Gurgi, yelping joyfully, tried to greet everyone at once, Taran stepped quickly to Eilonwy's side, put his arms about her, and drew the princess close to him. "I had given up hope." "A silly thing to do," Eilonwy answered. "I never did, though I admit having a few uneasy moments with that ruffian Dorath, and I could tell you tales you wouldn't believe about wolves and bears. I'll save them for later, when you can tell me all that's been happening to you. As for the huntsman," she continued, as the reunited companions made their way to the tunnel, "I saw the whole thing. At first I hadn't any idea what you were up to. Then I understood it. It was wonderful. I should have known Dolly had a hand in it. Good old Dolly. It looked like a river of burning ice." The princess stopped suddenly, and her eyes widened. "Do you realize what you've done?" she whispered. "Don't you see?" "Know what we've done?" laughed Fluda. "Indeed we do. We've rid ourselves of the huntsman, and a good job it was. A flam couldn't have done it better. As for what I see, I'm more pleased with what I can't see, if you take my meaning, namely, not a sign of those villains." "Hen Wen's prophecy," Eilonwy cried. "Part of it's come true. Have you all forgotten? Night turned to noon, and the rivers burn with frozen fire ere Durnwen be regained. Well, you've burned a river, or so it seems to me. Frozen fire could just as well mean all that ice and flaming branches, couldn't it?" Taran looked closely at the princess. His hands trembled as the words of the prophecy echoed in his memory. "Have you seen what we ourselves did not see? But have you not done as much as we did, without realizing it yourself? Think. Night turned to noon. Your bauble made daylight of darkness." It was Eilonwy's turn to be surprised. "So it did," she exclaimed. "Yes, yes," shouted Gurgi. "Wise piggy told the truth. Mighty blade will be found again." Fluda cleared his throat. "A flam is always encouraging," he said.
But in this case, I should remind you, the prophecy also said Dernwyn's flame would be quenched, and its power would vanish, which leaves us no better off than we were, even if we did manage to find it. And I also recall something about asking mute stones to speak. So far, I've heard not a word from any of the stones here, though in the matter of boulders and rocks, there's hardly a short supply. The only message they've given me is that they're hard to sleep on. Moreover, if you want my opinion, I'd say don't trust prophecies in the first place. It's been my experience they're as bad as enchantments and lead only to one thing: trouble.
I do not understand the meaning of the prophecy myself, Terran said. Are these signs of hope, or do we deceive ourselves by wishing them to be? Only Dalbin or Gwydion has wisdom to interpret them. Yet I can't help feeling there is some hope at last. But it is true, our task is no easier than it was. Dolly grimaced. No easier? It's impossible now. Do you still mean to gain the Red Fallows? I warn you, the Cauldron-born are far out of reach. He snorted. Don't talk to me about prophecies. Talk about time. We've lost too much of it. I have long thought about this too, Terran answered. It has been in my mind ever since the tunnel fell. I believe our only chance is to go straight across the mountains and try to hold back the Cauldron-born as they turn northwest to Anuvan. Slim hope, Dolly replied. The fair folk can't venture that far. It's forbidden land. That close to Aron's realm, fair folk would die. Gwystel's waypost was nearest to the land of death, and you've seen what it did to his digestion and disposition. The best we could do is to put you well on your way. One of us might go with you, he added. You can imagine who that is. Good old Dolly. I've spent so much time above ground with you humans that being in Anuvan can't harm me. Yes, I'll go with you, Dolly went on, scowling furiously. I see nothing else for it. Good old Dolly. Sometimes I wish I didn't have such an agreeable temper. Ugh.
Hey, you want to buy something? You can check the description for my books and audiobooks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.